I'm excited about this next session because if you were here last year, we did a session, it was called No Hallucinations, Firms Share Real Implementations of AI. And I wanted to do one because it's 1 year later. We're 2 years into what we're now just calling AI, since ChatGPT came out in, what was it, November 2022? Something like that. So some firms have made some great progress, some have not. Some vendors have made some great progress, some have not. And I met some of these folks through various interactions. I was lucky enough to speak with Kevin on a panel at Clock this past May. And then I started following him on LinkedIn. I see all this stuff he publishes on LinkedIn about what his firm is doing. If you don't follow him on LinkedIn, you should. You'll hear about some of what he's doing. David, I have been working with. I've known him for, I don't know how long, 2 decades, I think, something like that. We've been working together recently, and I know they're doing a lot of amazing stuff. And I didn't know Andrew, but I came across an article that he wrote, and it was very practical and no nonsense. And I'm like, that guy knows what he's talking about. I got to get him on a panel. So, and then Melissa is going to bring it all together. She's got an excellent background in this as well, as you'll see. So I'm super excited about this one. It's the No BS AI panel again for the second year, and I'm excited about it. So I'm going to turn it over. Keep down.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you all for joining. My name is Melissa Morrison, and I'm a director of segment for large markets at LexisNexis. I focus heavily on our content and practice area strategy, and I manage a team of practice area specialists who specialize in various practice areas, kind of like the KM attorneys of LexisNexis. So I am very happy to be here today, and I will let our panelists, I'll turn it over to you, Kevin, to introduce yourself.
Yeah, Kevin Bielawski, Director of Legal Operations at Husch Blackwell. I'm lucky enough to lead our legal project management team and our pricing team, but spend a lot of time interfacing with clients and collaborating with our IT group. So I think of myself as not an art enthusiast, but if you think about if you were an art enthusiast and you got to sit in the studios of master painters and watch them work. It's my analogy for watching these AI, brilliant geniuses.
I thought you said that's what we were watching.
No, not us. It's I got chauffeur knowledge around. Yeah, just watching some of these PhD level folks that we get to interact with on a daily basis work.
Ready for me? David Roof. I'm the Chief Client Solutions Officer at Baker Donaldson. I'm also a shareholder, and I'm on our board of directors. I lead a team, like Kevin, of project managers, pricing specialists, legal technologists. Jillian Eaton, who's here, leads our KM and research function. We also support practice technologies, and one of the responsibilities of our team is constantly monitoring new technologies that we can use to improve the value as well as the efficiency of our services.
I'm Andy Sprogis. I'm at Katten Muchin. I'm the firm's Chief Innovation Officer. Small innovation team has been around for about 6 years. My background was, before that, I was the executive director, so it's like the deputy chief operating officer. And one of the things I had started working on was integrating technology, new process into our practices. And when we reorganized, this thing about innovation came up, and it's shift what you're doing and get into this. And it was valuable, I think, to our firm because I sort of knew where the bodies were buried and had a reputation where I'm not going to, BS people about what's possible. And that was very helpful in terms of storytelling to get us moving on an innovation front, because I think people trusted that I wasn't going to bring things that are not worth their time. And I have a lot of respect for chief innovation officers and others who come in from the outside of firms and come in and have to do that sales pitch because they don't have the capital, that we do when we're in-house. So it's really cool. But I was lucky enough to have that background. So I had the innovation team, and I also have our research/library team underneath me as well.
Great. So it's hard to believe that it's been nearly 2 years since the explosion of generative AI. I think in some ways it feels like it's been around forever and it's kind of all we've been talking about forever. And in some ways it feels like it has only just started. So one of the topics that really has come up quite a bit around generative AI is how firms are putting together their own policies around generative AI and organizing those policies and really the evolution of them. So I'll start with you, David, since you've shared some specific examples of policies that you've instituted.
Sure. So I guess around 2018, we started seeing the signals in the market that AI was starting to become, really a viable tool for the legal industry. So we had a consultant come in and do training for our team, some members of our technology team, as well as our data privacy team and our general counsel's office. And at that time, we were talking about, probably machine learning. We hadn't really gotten to, what is generative AI today, and it wasn't as accessible. So we really didn't most of the time we were looking at AI that was incorporated into, one of the products that we purchased. Well, then comes, 2022, and generative AI, and we had a firm retreat, I think in March of 23 it was, and our general counsel stood up and started talking about the number of lawyers and administrative professionals that were capitalizing on publicly available generative AI, ChatGPT, Anthropic, those types of things. And they were very concerned because nobody had been trained on appropriate uses of that technology. So based upon that evidence, they decided that we needed to develop a policy in the firm. So the policy, this is an excerpt of the policy, but essentially on the left-hand side, this is the policy as it applies to primarily publicly available generative AI large language models. And essentially, we were making sure that everyone understood an appropriate use. Look, those tools are very valuable. I use them. They're very valuable and we'll talk a little bit later about some of the administrative things that you can do with them. However, there's a real danger in loading PII, client confidential information, and if you're not a trained lawyer, you might stumble into that. So we wanted to make sure that everybody in the firm understood what the appropriate use of that new technology was that was accessible, by going into your web browser, basically. And then we also wanted to make sure that, even if you were using something that the firm had approved, and we'll talk about some of our approved products, we wanted to make sure that you were using those things appropriately, consistent with outside counsel guidelines, consistent with court rules. I've had a couple of attorneys tell me that in their jurisdiction, the courts prohibit the use of generative AI for the development of briefs. We also wanted to make sure that we were telling clients when we used these. We were getting, RFIs and new requirements from clients that said they wanted to know specifically when we were using these tools for their services. They also wanted to know whether their data was being fed into one of these tools. But I think the biggest thing about our policy was this underlined section on the right-hand side. And that was to make sure that our attorneys, our paralegals, everyone understood that this is not a substitute for your legal judgment. This is really an ancillary to your legal practice. It's just like, Thomson, Lexis, how we've used those tools for years. You can't rely 100% on the output that you get from those tools, and we wanted our attorneys and all of our legal professionals to understand they needed to double check things. There's also another component of this, which is how to vet these tools, and I'm gonna let Kevin talk about that.
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on the horizon to look at the various tools coming in. I can't let go with one of the interesting OCG requirements from one of our clients that was, they wanted to know within the time entry if AI was used. They wanted to see it, and it was spelled out very concretely that was specific. So that was an interesting one. But yeah, as these tools come on the market and you have a team that's evaluating them and can see, right now I think we're in 4-, '01 in a preview version out in the public space, but until it gets into production, it won't be available internally to our firm. But I can get to the 4.0 version currently with our in-house ChatGPT version. I can also toggle between Anthropic's LLMs, either Opus or Sonnet, and OpenAI's. So those are some of the things that team is looking at much more closely than I am in terms of how are they vetting. Some of the things in our policies are, as David said, human in the loop at all time. Zero data retention. You have to have that spelled out as well. We aren't using client data to train any of the LLMs. We do, and it's interesting, this dichotomy between are you using our data to train LLMs? Well, no, but I know my team uses it regularly across all our clients to help define scopes of work and levels of effort to get certain things done and get some understanding of cost to serve, which in the pricing world, you got to know cost to serve. So those are some of the things we're thinking about and have incorporated into our AI program.
Great. One of the things that, David, you mentioned is the education, and I think that's another really important piece of the puzzle here with generative AI. And at Lexis, we've found that with the launch of Lexis Plus AI, that's been such a huge, important part of the process, is partnering with firms to educate their users around not just using Lexis Plus AI, but AI in general and LLMs and managing expectations of what should generative AI do and what should generative AI not do. So I will let Andy tell us a little bit about how your firm has approached the education piece around generative AI.
Yeah, and it's new to us, it's new to everybody. So we're, currently, have a product that people can sort of go on their own journey to self-teach before we do anything with them. So they get to a certain level understanding around it. And then we will insert ourselves in, meaning the innovation team, and talk to them about what it means. We'll, remind them of our policies, which are not that different from what you heard from before. But, the key is, I think, and we've heard this from other panelists today, it was just like getting this in front of people before they use it, okay? And to me, part of that is sort of the platform stuff, the stuff that we have sort of endorsed and we're starting to use or test. And then there's just search generally, right? Because I do worry, and we did a survey internally of all of our attorneys to see who is using, this is probably a year ago now, of who's using ChatGPT or any of the other products out there. And it wasn't that many, and they weren't doing it on work, and that's great. But you just worry that people are going to forget, right? Even if, and I don't want to we might get down the road of Copilot, but, if you have enterprise search within, Microsoft Copilot, not Microsoft 365 Copilot, it is sort of a safer search engine, but we're not giving it to our people. We're not telling them they have that because they're going to go into somewhere else and think they have Perplexity or somewhere else and think they have those same protections. So it is a little bit of education. It's a lot of guardrails or just blocking the on-ramp at some level.
Yep. David, I know that you have partnered with us regarding the rollout and education piece of Lexis Plus AI, and you provided us with some examples of kind of how that's gone.
Yeah, that's the Royal Week. It's really Jillian over there that's running that show. But, we started out, I don't know if you saw, one of the requirements in our policy was that you had to take kind of a general firm training before you could take advantage of these tools. And that was primarily for the same reasons Andy was talking about. It is that, we wanted to make sure that everybody understood the risks associated with using these tools, putting data in these tools. And we also wanted to kind of convert the mindset. Look, anybody who's a lawyer in here, in law school, we were trained on Boolean searches, and that may be ancient, but you also had natural language searches that most people were used to in a lot of the products. This prompting thing was a whole new ball game, and it's very, very powerful. And so not only did we want to do general firm training so our attorneys understood the risks and our legal professionals understood the risks, we also wanted them to understand how powerful this prompting capability was. So we did the general training first, and then when we subscribed to Lexis Plus AI, we worked with Lexis to roll out, a very detailed, I'd say more of kind of a practice-specific training, and that's what you're seeing on the slide here. And, Lexis has been really good about partnering with us on these training sessions, investing what I think is a lot of time in us in making sure that these things are rolled out and that we're getting adoption and usage. And that's why we included this chart on the stats, the usage stats, showing that as we've rolled out and done these trainings every quarter, we're seeing greater and greater adoption, and that is, what our firm wants to see. These are very valuable tools, but they're not cheap, so we need to make sure that our users are taking advantage of them.
Yep.
We've got the gate as well in front of the tools where you have to go through some online training that incorporates our 7 or 8 page policy elements of it around ethical use, ethical considerations, some very specific points made within our AI policy, and then at the end you're doing the sign off that, hey, I agree to all this, and then the gate opens for you to get access to those tools.
Yeah, I think that's very important. So obviously, Lexis Plus AI is just one example. There's so many tools, there's so many options. This is just results of a survey from Law 360 Pulse from April showing what are firms using or for their generative AI capabilities. So there's still 40% that said none. So it's a work in progress, but you can just see some statistics of what firms are using right now.
So we do, and on the training side, we do have some of the Lexis products baked within our AI site internally that people can go to on a self-serve basis and work through. This surprised me, 40% saying none. That was surprising. The low percent on the co-counsel side surprised me as well. We've got co-counsel and have, pretty neat.
Raise your hand if you ever thought you'd see Bing on a slide 2 years ago. Right? I mean, it's just like, it's amazing what they did for that.
Some of the other ones, so we start to look through, and we break it up a little bit into, hey, what's out there available commercially versus what's the data science and AI team at Husch using behind this curtain or in their world, where they're like dealing with Databricks and they're up doing the AWS AI tools and the Azure AI tools coupled with a co-counsel, a co-pilot, trying to think a couple of the other ones, the Automate Anywhere, which RPA has been around for a while, but they've now introduced like AI elements to it that you can do some pretty cool things with. So that's just a few things we're using.
So I know, David, you've shared some how things have gone with Lexis Plus AI, but obviously there's many generative AI tools that have been rolled out. Best practices, what's working, what's kind of would be your advice?
So when Patrick introduced firms that are doing great, I was a little nervous because I think we're doing okay, but we've approached this with cautious optimism about these tools. When last year, we wanted to pilot, because nobody really understood or had a good example of how these tools added value to at least the research and some of the drafting. And so we piloted both Westlaw as well as Lexis with some attorney teams at the firm. And what we found was that they greatly enhanced the speed to which we could get research completed. Even to the extent of one associate telling us she did a side-by-side project with Lexis and was able to reduce the amount of time she spent by 2/3. That's pretty powerful. However, she also told us that some of the citations were not 100% accurate. So there's value in these tools. They're not 100% perfect, and you've got to evaluate your results. That's why our policy and the policy, Kevin, the human in the loop, you've got to look at your results. You've got to verify them. That's our job as lawyers. But these do get you to the answer more quickly. And I've done some research myself through there, and what I have found is that the process that you follow is actually a little more intuitive for me. So you go in and you'll ask for, as an associate, I would have to do all this research and I have to tease out all the issues from multiple cases. I'd probably read 10 cases that had no relevance to what I was doing. And what these tools will do is provide you with the issues right up front. And then your job is to go verify that those issues are covered by the case law that they provide and support. I think that's a much more effective workflow for research and developing legal work product. And then with Copilot, there were two versions. We started out with, I'll call it a web version, but it was protected. Everything that we put in to Copilot was erased when a session was completed. It was not integrated with Microsoft Office. It also, no client data was going outside of the firm. And then here in the past probably 3 months, we piloted the integration of Copilot inside the firm into Microsoft Office 365.
Yeah, when I think about our title is 2 years, right? 2 years look back, and I feel like this started a long, long time ago. If you think about some of the machine learning that's been around for a while, our first dabble just into the machine learning space was with a gentleman who had worked at a big pharma company, and he was responsible. He built out, 100 plus machine learning models that helped this big pharma company figure out where they needed to put those R&D dollars to maximize revenue down the road. And so he wanted to apply some of those models to a different industry. We have to connect through some industry connections. And this is 7 or 8 years ago, and that was one of our early, foot in the pool to see what the temperature was like. And that turned out to do some really neat internal things that we were like, oh my gosh, it's really has some legs to it. We have a visionary CIO in Blake Rooney that saw, I believe, what was coming on the horizon and started to build out and started to get these PhD level folks who had already been in, retail or on the, corporate side of the world working in this space, and brought them in and built them up so that when things started to be introduced in the generative AI space, I feel like, and I'm sure others would say, no, it's not that way, but I feel like we were kind of ready. He got us ready, no one else. And so I feel like might be out there a little bit on the forefront, but I'm hunting constantly for pushback on that. So anyone want to kick me, feel free.
So obviously, we're all continuing to evaluate various solutions, and in doing so, there are challenges. One of the things that my team has done is develop a series of AI-focused CLE courses, which we've had a lot of success with, because of course everybody needs their CLE credits, but if you can also learn about ethics and AI and energy implications in AI and employment. So that's one way that we've kind of tried to take that education piece and use it to educate. But I don't want to spend too much time on this because I want to get to our use cases, but kind of what have you guys found are the challenges with sometimes you can mandate that somebody attends some sort of training, but it's a challenge in managing expectations and kind of navigating the rollout. So anyone want to share some challenges or success stories?
I mean, I think they have to have a use case. They have to want to use it, right? And, without that, and usually from the perspective of the innovation and CAM people probably in the room, it's like, who they are. You know who your power users are. You know the people are going to sort of listen to you and volunteer, and the use cases. And frankly, a lot of the use cases in GenAI or a lot of the use cases in AI just sort of combined, right? And sort of an easier interface, in my opinion. When you have those users like, hey, I got a different way of doing this, or, GenAI, we can do it this way, and it'll be easier for you to use, or the output's better. So that's how you have to sell it, because top down, at least at our firm, doesn't work. We're a bottom up, let's get some use cases, let's talk to the people, and do it that way. We're not, we have not engaged on the research side, anyone on the, whether it's Lexis or Westlaw, in terms of the AI-assisted, GenAI-assisted research. So we don't have that to sort of as the stepping point so people understand it already. So we have a different way of approaching it.
I think a big challenge is the hype. That is the biggest time suck on our team right now is what's happening is vendors, if they can't get to us, they're going behind us to the attorneys. And when they talk to the attorneys, they're making all these promises about what the software can do. And then we're put in the position of having to vet that application. I will tell you, we probably have, used to we'd have maybe 1 to 2 new applications a month that might come through our team. Now it's like 8, 9, 10, and it's really, you've got all these new vendors that are coming out. They're making a lot of promises about what their tools can do. They're not exact, we have found that some of them don't pass our security protocols, and that's, so we have to go through the whole evaluation process, then get to security because we've got a lawyer who's trying to promote that application. So I think that for us, that's been one of the biggest challenges. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, our InfoSec group is working hand in hand with our data science and AI team, and so I leave it to those folks to figure all that stuff out. But I'm on the other side of this, whatever we're in, that there's this underhype. I think this is bigger than people are really giving it credit for. I think former CEO of Google kind of alluded to this as well. So I'm optimistic that this will all be good for everybody, and there's a lot of neat things coming with innovation and efficiency and in the law firm space where efficiency starts to tug at some historical business models, and trying to balance that and figure that out is an interesting problem to solve.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the things that, Andy, you mentioned is what do you need to use this for? What are you trying to accomplish? So I'll share 2 slides. One is the results of a C-suite survey that we conducted, asking C-suites, what are you using generative AI for? What is it allowing you to do? And you can see, allowing firms to explore new practice areas and offer services that weren't profitable before. Second one I think is really important, to complement human lawyers, not replace them. And you would think that would be obvious, but it has seemed to need to really be reiterated. Faster outputs, reduce billable hours, but also enable value-based pricing, and help law firms automate routine, high volume, and lower level tasks for greater efficiency and lower overhead. We also asked law firms, how do you want to use generative AI? And you can see the results, the top priorities for using generative AI on this screen. So if anyone has any thoughts on some of these, we're going to get into some specific use cases in just a minute, but does this align with the priorities that you've seen internally?
I think so. It's interesting on the legal research side, if I may, what percentage of people in our firms do legal research, right? It's not 100% of the attorneys, right? It's some percentage. So, that for that subset well, 2 things. For that subset, it'll definitely shrink the time they have to do, but will it bring other people into research, or is we have good researchers are good researchers, right? And then, what does it do to the new people? Are they going to understand how to do research now? And if to the extent, they start learning in law schools based on the GenAI supplemented search, how's that going to work for us? So the legal research is an interesting thing entirely.
Yeah, and I had a conversation with a colleague a couple of weeks ago about this thing that I talked about, where my work process for doing research as an associate, where I would read probably 10% of the cases I read were irrelevant, but I was learning as I read those cases. And that's going to be a component that's now lost in the practice of law. So, we're going to have to come up with ways to kind of supplement for that. And I think the verification process that you have with the research tools is going to help with that. But the ones that I find on your list here that are probably the most compelling for me are the summarizing. I mean, the capabilities to actually be able to take a load of documents that, as an associate, I would have to spend hours, countless hours reading, and now you can summarize those in minutes. Pretty incredible. The drafting tools, looking forward to, we've seen a number of drafting tools that incorporate kind of what I would call a knowledge management and then the generative AI integration component. I think those are going to be extremely promising. They're going to speed our drafting capabilities. And I think the other thing that probably scares me the most is clients are going to take advantage of those too. I was talking with a client the other day who is actually developing their own in-house AI to evaluate vendor contracts in particular segments, and what they're providing to the outside counsel is the evaluated contracts. So they're instead of their outside counsel spending time reading cover to cover, they're focusing their outside counsel on specific issues that they want them to address. I mean, that's probably for very standardized contracts that they process on a regular basis, but that's a change, and that's time that we previously would have billed to that client for evaluating contracts.
So connecting the AI tools to the organizational data is the horizon I feel like we're going deeper on every day. And so, I think there's a lot of promise there apparently we're lucky. If you have a data lake, you're lucky. So that's what I heard. So I feel like we've got that locked in. And so there's an easier way to access and get to that data in a seamless manner and help with decision making.
Can I make one more point about the training side? Like, how many of us are involved in sort of this discussion of the training and what are we going to do for our associates? Good, I'm glad, because I think one of the scary things is it's not the talent group. It's got to be us too, because we're innovation and the KM professionals are thinking this way, and it's a new way of thinking for our firms too. So I'm glad we're all involved in it. Sometimes I fear, and maybe that's my own fear internally, that we're not sort of in it as much as we should be, but that makes me very happy, and we have to continue that push because we're going to be the ones who it's going to fall to.
So I know that a couple of you have some very specific use cases that you've found success with, and in the interest of time, I want to get to a few of them. So David, if you want to spend a minute or two telling us a little bit about this example.
Sure. So Legalmation, who's outside and I think was on the spotlight up here, we've been implementing that tool for, I think, 2 years now. On a very large portfolio. So in this portfolio of litigation that we support, we probably process 7,000 responses to discovery a year. And we had been doing that for 2 years for this client. We started recognizing that we just couldn't keep that cycle running. We had to take advantage of some of these automation tools, the AI, to help us improve that for the client. So we went to the client. I had seen Legalmation, I think in 2019 at another conference, and I was amazed at what they were able to do. So we got in touch with Thomas and his team and talked to them about this application actually automating responsive discovery. And we worked with them for a couple of months and actually deployed this. And what was interesting, it was a good training ground for what I think is how we're going to be able to capitalize on generative AI more effectively, which was, we had thousands of requests for discovery that were coming from various plaintiffs' firms. And when you put all the responses into a big bucket and, ran the machine learning, you got a lot of noise. So what we determined was we needed to isolate buckets, and we could actually, one plaintiff's firm, here's all the responses we've done for that one. Here's, plaintiff's firm B, here's all the responses we did for that one. And so what Legalmation did was, we'd pull in a new request for discovery, and it would go out to that plaintiff's firm's database and basically pull in all the prior responses to similar questions, and it was really fast. It was amazing for us, and we did this in a partnership with our client, and we were able we set up a before-after time entry related to how long it took us to do those responses, and I think we actually went over 40% savings for the client by using this tool. And you think about on a scale of 7,000 response, that's a lot of money for this client. And so, that begs the question about, what's the future of all this for the stuff we're talking about, all the money that's being saved with these tools. But from our perspective, we felt like it was our obligation to bring this to the table to the client because of the volume, the portfolio was growing, and we knew that they needed some relief.
Yeah, we think about it are you creating a competitive advantage for your clients? And not only your firm, but for your clients. And so, like one of our use cases that I'll talk about here in a second, there's always these time constraints typically associated with some of our use cases where something comes up, and the one instance was where we needed to evaluate some administrative case law from a state site. State site was pretty clunky, couldn't get that information easily. So created or extracted all the administrative case law, got that into our internal AI platform so that our associates could query it and prompt against it, and then get the results quicker in this tight compressed time frame, saving, I don't know, north of 1,200 hours a year from the way they'd been doing it previously. So I think you have to, as you're going down the road with these projects, along parallel, like what's the traditional method that this is? You talked about one of your associates doing that. Like, I think that's imperative, particularly early on, to really show what the difference is and be able to show value up the chain across to your clients and to others across your firm about the power. Because the word of mouth, you talk about trying to get adoption, and we promote some of these use cases internally. We have a phenomenal communications team that does a great job, laying out what the issue is, what the solution was, what the result was, and so that helps.
In the interest of time, I'm not going to ask any questions around this slide, but I did want to share it so you can see on your screen some use cases for Copilot. And Kevin, I know you have some very specific use cases that we probably are not going to get to all of them. So if there's one you want to start with.
Yeah, I think if you go to the next slide, and this is the one where they're on the state website. If you go to the next one, this is around a company that had around 21,000 documents associated with 1,200 plus different contracts, and trying to align which of those documents were associated with which contract, and then getting them into reverse chronological order and then into a table that was easily, within our AI platform that could be interrogated in a certain way to give insight to the client about how they could position their discussions with a third-party stakeholder related to that particular project. And so, again, giving your client a competitive advantage when they're sitting across from either a plaintiff or a third party that they're negotiating with. That's where we see a lot of the value in some of these use cases.
Yep. You want to?
And the last one, 400 voicemails, again, short time frame. This got introduced when late on a Friday, or not even late on a Friday, early on a Friday, and they had to decide whether they're going to do a motion to postpone or not. Our AI team was able to jump in and use some of they'd already created some transcription AI tools from either Azure or AWS, and use those to transcribe not only these 400 voicemails, but get them into a table within our AI platform where it could be you apply NLP to it or even some prompt engineering to it to interrogate those voicemails to figure out which ones are important, which ones aren't. Oh, by the way, here's a link to the actual voicemail if you want to really hear it. So that the speed at which they were to do that in the same day, and you compare that to what it would have taken probably, 5, 6 associates to do that over an entire weekend of work. The
last question, and I'll start with you, Andy, is what are you seeing in terms of client demand?
It depends, right? Not as much as I thought we'd have at this point. I think they're still getting comfortable with it. And, I had a call yesterday with a client that, just wanted to get their journey started. And this wasn't a small company. It wasn't a small legal group. It was a legal team of 50 people. And we're just trying to get started. And we don't have the budget for it. And, those of us in the room probably have the luxury of a little more experimentation and some budget to do it. Whereas, a lot of legal departments are kind of strapped and have to think it through. And even if you can say there's a advantage to doing it, whether it's headcount or efficiency or speed, they're having a hard time with it. So we're not hearing it as much. And if I could jump in with a use case, because actually we're talking about litigation, we do some little bit on the transactional side. So on the GenAI side, taking a purchase and sale agreement, doing a detailed prompt, and getting a summary memo or a summary that would have taken 7 hours, and because we did this, it probably takes 5 minutes plus an hour of review time. That's real stuff. And it's not, the efficiency, and a lot of this on the transactional side is on the front end of the work, right? It's the first draft, it's some of this. And that maybe doesn't change the value proposition, but boy, it's better for the associate, right? When they get a call on a weekend or a Friday where they have to do some of this work, instead of doing 7 hours of work, they can do an hour of work and keep it moving, right? They're happy, it got done faster. I think that's the kind of use cases that are going to be helpful and that at least we're focusing on now. The downstream stuff, I don't know what's going to happen on transactions, right? But for that and helping with the speed and velocity of the transactions, I think is very important. So I just wanted to get that use case out there before we moved on.
Can I? So on our team, we joke. The way we describe clients right now with regard to this is bipolar, because we have some clients that are like, when are you using it? How are you using it? How much are you saving me? And then we have other clients that are, don't touch it.
Right.
I want to be asked before it's used on any of our, and the RFIs that we're getting are starting to get more sophisticated too. We were talking with a vendor a little while ago, and initially we were getting questions like, where are you using AI? Don't use AI for my stuff. Well, AI, we've been using AI for like 10 years,
So
right?
you can spell check your document then.
Yeah, right. And so, you had that kind of starting point, but now they're getting more sophisticated, whereas like you see some of the questions on this slide right here, we're getting those kinds of questions where they're more detailed. Are you using publicly available AI, for our services? What types of technologies are using? Is my data feeding the model? That's a big one. And our GC is really concerned about that issue too, because we have guidelines that outside of AI prohibit the use of their data for other services.
Yeah, I'm seeing high demand. I think there's a huge appetite for this. I know legal departments want to show value to the business and engage with their business clients internally in a different way, and oftentimes we can be that conduit for them to, jump in and say, hey, do you want to interrogate those 100,000 documents or contracts and find out a lot of information about them?
Yep.
We can help.
Yeah. So I think the moral of the story is we're 2 years in and we've learned a lot, but we still have a ways to go. So thank you to all of my panelists for your time. And
Thank you so much, folks. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but you all are sticking around at the cocktail party, I think, and maybe you can chat and answer some questions then. Thank you so much.